weapon that has all of this text, but he can gain life off of it and leave it in play, and he can also put 4 cards on the bottom of his graveyard, so it actually kind of acts as an elixir.
Yeah, the only problem with that against another control deck is Elixir can't be detention sphered.
Yes.
So his plan doesn't really work that well against other control decks. I think his deck is out. He obviously would prefer to have to play against decks like White Weenie or any of the Devotion decks. Those are the kind of the decks that he kind of built this deck to beat. However, when he has to play against a true control deck like either Blue White Control or Esper, I think he's at a little disadvantage.
I agree. So what we're going to see here is just a lot of, draw, go, cycling of cards, all of that good stuff. Mutavault into play for Nass, going to pass the turn back. I think Kassari, I feel like he would be at a disadvantage in this matchup.
I think he's a huge disadvantage just because the Blue White Control deck just does what John is trying to do just much better.
Yeah.
And again, even a card like Mutavault can be a nightmare for John to deal with.
But I know he's coming in. He said, I have a plan in these control matchups in which I do have Mistcutter Hydras in my sideboard, and I just play a ton of lands. I resolve Urban Evolutions, put more lands into play, and just punch him in the face with this. He's going to Revelate for 1 on the end step.
Yeah, and that's definitely a good plan. I mean, I like that plan of just trying to get big with Mistcutter Hydra. The problem is Mistcutter Hydra can still be answered with Supreme Verdict. So once they know what your plan is, they're just going to adapt to it. And I think it's also still difficult for you to beat the cards like Elspeth and Jace because it's a lot easier for Matt to kind of get those to resolve because he can make his land drops better. He has cards like Gainsay, and he doesn't need to do much to try to force those cards through.
See, Gainsay takes care of that Revelation for 1 there. Kassari does draw a land and puts it directly into play. Going to do that now with the Temple of Mystery.
So we're going to see an Azorius Charm get cycled here. And that's exactly what Matt wants to do in this matchup, just to keep making his land drops, keep cycling Azorius Charm. That's effectively what its main role is in this particular matchup.
First one to miss the land drop oftentimes is the one who does lose. You see Nass is going to draw his Elixir of Immortality. You're going to pass the turn back here. So Nass has 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 lands in play. Kassari also has 7 lands in play. So both players are keeping up with mana.
Yeah, and Matt just has so many more hard counters than John. So he can kind of be a little bit more aggressive with the counter spells. Obviously, you don't always want to counter a card like Revelation. Sometimes you just want to counter Planeswalkers. But I think he kind of knows what John's deck is all about. And a card like Sphinx of Revelation is probably a little more relevant to counter in this matchup.
Kassari's going to cast a Revelation here for 2. Looks like we're going to have a bit of a counter war. Is Dissolve, I think, is what Nass is going to cast to try to counter this Revelation. He seems a little bit unsure of himself, however, if he wants to have this fight over what is a glorified divination.
Yeah, that's the thing. You don't really want to counter Sphinx of Revelation in the control matchups just because they usually come down to decking anyway.
Okay.
And there's so few win conditions in the control mirrors that you really want to keep your counter spells, hold them up for the specific threat that you're concerned about. Like Sphinx of Revelation can kill you in the long run, but in general, the card that's going to kill you are the Planeswalkers or a card like Elixir or something like that.
Kassari just going to play a Hallowed Fountain tap and pass the turn back. I think Nass is the one who misses his land drop now. Kassari going to pass back.
Yeah, Matt drawing Detention Spheres, which really don't do that much in this matchup. He needs to start drawing Divinations here or Sphinx of Revelation. Get something so they can keep making his land drops.
I really do like, I understand exactly what Kassari is setting up. Like, the thing I like is that he has a game plan coming in the sideboard games. It revolves around Mistcutter Hydra. This is his game plan. Just play a million lands, slam down a Mistcutter. I wouldn't be surprised if he needles a Mutavault here, so that Mistcutter can actually just come in and just punch you in the face for 10. You deal with the first one, hit you in the face for 10 with the next one, you die.
Yeah, I could. The only problem with that is if he goes all in on a Mistcutter Hydra, Matt can just Sphinx of Revelations for a lot, untap, cast an Elspeth, uptick it, downtick it.
So let's see. We're going to have a fight over a Pithing Needle here. Gainsay is going to attempt to take care of this Dissolve. Time to go to battle over a 1-mana artifact.
I can't imagine with 2 detentions. He just discarded a Detention Sphere. He has another one in his hand. I can't imagine wanting to fight over a Pithing Needle here. But
see, Nass has to have an Elspeth in his hand right now too. So he'll take a draw step, draws a Revelation.
That's a great draw here. He can try to bait out a counterspell from John. So yeah, Pithing Needle did name Mutavault.
And there's a Jace. Are we going to fight over this? It looks like we are. So Dissolve number 2 from Nass. Does Kassari have a counterspell? Does he even care about this?
Let's see. I think. Okay, so the Dissolve does get resolved. I kind of I kind of like letting John's dissolve resolve, and then just casting Sphinx of Revelation for 3. Then if John does have a counter for that, you can resolve your Elspeth, and you could also detention sphere the Jace.
So Jace, Temple Garden. Jason Temple Garden going to go to Kassari's Crypt. He's going to put that on the bottom. Checks his hand size.
So despite the fact that John was able to resolve a Jace, still not that bad for Matt because he can attempt to try to resolve a big Sphinx of Revelation here.
There is your Temple Garden. Kassari does pass the turn back with just 3 mana available, and as you mentioned, here is a Revelation for 3.
So if John does counter this, it's good for Matt. If he doesn't, it's good for Matt.
Yep.
So a win-win situation here. And I still think he's going to try to get that Elspeth to resolve this turn.
Yeah, I think it's time to fight over that now.
Yeah, so he might detention sphere the Pithing Needle and then attack the Jace with the Mutavault.
He immediately is reaching towards 3 mana.
See what he wants to do.
Wouldn't be surprised if that's his play at all.
Yeah, he has a lot of options. He has a Jace of his own along with that Elspeth. So looks like, yep, we're going to go after Needle instead.
He tried to bait him.
I have a more efficient way to deal with that. Thank you.
I like it. I like it. All right, there goes Jace.
Are we going to see a Jace of our own here? Or we're just going to keep mana up? He does have another Mutavault in his hand and an Elixir. So a world of options for Matt here.
Yeah. Both players are going to have just a ton of cards in their hand the entire time. Plays a Mutavault and passes the turn back. So Kassari's going to tap all those lands. He'll take a draw. Now Kassari does have an Aetherling in his hand. That's certainly something to note.
And he has 1 copy of Aetherling in his sideboard,
Yep.
or his main deck rather, yeah.
So Jace is going to show up again. There's Temple Garden. There's a Temple of Mystery, and there's a Plains. So land drops.
And I don't know, William Jensen wrote an article where you're supposed to split him 3-0.
Yeah, if you're going to be decking.
If you're trying to deck, you should split 3-0. And I actually kind of like doing that in this situation because the difference between 2 and 3 land in this particular situation might not be as relevant as 1 less card in their deck. But
ooh, is he going to go for Aetherling right now? 6 mana? What is this?
It's Elspeth instead. Okay. Well, I think if you're going to try to bait a counter spell, you rather get the Elspeth to resolve than Aetherling.
Yeah. Nass
you'd rather get the Elspeth counter than your Aetherling.
Yeah. Nass has a negate for that, and I don't think Kassari cares about that all that much, passing the turn back.
Well, the negate can't go after the Aetherling, so it doesn't matter that much. And it looks like the Mutavault's going to be able to take out the Jace this turn, so Matt's still in pretty good shape, but I don't know if he has another counter spell for the eventual Aetherling that will be getting cast.
Well, he's going to fire at Mutavault. Well, looks like he's going to. Looks like he's going to start with a spell first.
Yeah, so we might see a Jace first.
Maybe get a little bit of info first. So the Planeswalker's going to resolve here on Nass's side. -2, we got a Detention Sphere. We got a Temple of Deceit and a Plains. Lands versus, Nass immediately takes the Sphere. It just seems like to me that Kassari is trying to set something up here. You know, by just running spells into counter spells, letting Jaces die, basically being glorified divinations. It seems like he's up to something.
I think he's just going for the Aetherling plan, and it's going to be hard for Matt to really. I don't know if John has a counter spell like another gainsay, but yeah, John's plan looks like he's got a Mistcutter in his hand too. So
takes a draw.
Mistcutter can deal with Jace because Matt doesn't even have any of his Mutavaults up.
There, now here is Mistcutter. The coast is definitely clear now, and we'll find out how big this is because he's using all his lands. This thing is absolutely gigantic. Let's see how many dice we actually have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is a 12-12, I believe.
Wow. And, you know, that's all well and good, but the problem is Matt can just play an Elspeth and make some tokens to block it for the rest of the game.
He's actually going to take down Jace, too, instead of going upstairs.
Yeah, and that's perfect. I think Matt's perfectly fine with that. Oh, wow. So great draw from Matt. He draws a Gainsay, which should give him a little protection against a potential Aetherling.
Yeah, that's a big draw.
I kind of like just making tokens here because if John does draw another Mistcutter Hydra, you're going to lose your Elspeth.
Looks like Matt's going to play an Elspeth. He's going to take it down, so that's why the Mistcutter's already gone. He's just going to pass the turn back with all that mana up, I believe.
I guess Matt's afraid of Detention Sphere.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a Gainsay for that. But playing it safe here. Not too concerned about a second Mistcutter Hydra. More concerned about Detention Sphere.
Yeah, the big thing here is that I don't think that, you know, he has an idea of what Kassari has in his deck, you know, so he has to learn a bunch of different stuff. Wow,
Matt
Kassari
used the Gainsay on an Aetherling, on a Jace, but he does have another Gainsay.
Kassari have counterspell? He does
Wow.
not.
Wow. I'm surprised that Matt cared about the Jace. Given he was able to so easily deal with it, he's got 3 copies of Mutavault in play, and now he doesn't have a Gainsay to deal with the Tension Sphere, so he loses his Elspeth this game. And that's the only copy of Elspeth in his deck, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He still has an Elixir in his hand, so that is his effective win condition.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 3 Mutavaults in play, too, so he's going to look
Yeah.
like he's going to rev for some amount here on his own turn while Kassari is tapped out.
Looks like it's almost the full amount.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I don't think he played a land this turn either, so he'll have at least 2 mana, potentially 3 mana.
He's drawing a few counterspells, dispels among them.
Yeah, negate. He's got a negate, dispel, and dissolve in his hand, along with the divination, and he still has that elixir.
Now there is Bow of Nylea.
And obviously, Bow is a way for John to put cards from his graveyard on the bottom of his library to prevent himself from decking, but it's not nearly as effective as elixir because it can get the Tension Sphere, which we know Matt has in his hand.
So here are all the things that the Bow does, besides being unbeatable in Theros Limited. Attacking creatures you control have Death Touch doesn't really matter very much, but as you see Elixir go toe-to-toe with Bow, this does have some upside here of the fact that you can gain 3 life against an aggressive deck multiple times, and you can put 4 target cards on the bottom of your graveyard in any order, so you can actually select what's going to go back into your deck. So there's a bit of a trade-off here, but the one thing that you did mention is that Bow you can actually D-Sphere, where Elixir you cannot.
Yeah. And, there's a Glare of Heresy. Great draw there from Matt because he can deal with the Tension Sphere now if he wants to get his Elspeth back.
See, Kassari's going to put some cards on the bottom of his deck now via the Bow.
Yeah, and I don't think Matt cares too much about it. He still has the Tension Sphere if he wants to deal with it, but I don't think he's in a rush to do so.
You see Nass is going to take a look. See, what exactly does that thing do? Oh, just 4 things. That's all. Take a draw step, does Kassari. He's got a Tension Sphere in his hand. He's going to use D-Sphere to take down the Jace. And now Nass is in the enviable position of where he can pick and choose what matters because Kassari just doesn't have very many cards in his hand. So if he wants to counter this, he can. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to. But he is going to negate that.
And Matt's going to untap. Matt has plenty of counter spells. I think he has a Dissolve along with a Dispel. And he's going to sacrifice the Elixir to get those cards from his graveyard back into his library and put himself way ahead of getting decked by John.
Yep. He is going off right now with the Elixir. I believe he sacrificed this in his upkeep.
And he still has those 3 copies of Mutavault, and John only has 1 card in his hand, so let's see if Matt decides to be a little aggressive and just start attacking with them, or if he's just all in on this decking plan.
D-Sphere was the draw there for Nass, and so D-Sphere is going to take care of the Bow, and this is the problem that you did mention with the card.
Yeah, given the fact that Matt won game 1, I don't think he's in too much of a rush to try to close this game out. He's fine with just playing the slow game and letting John try to do something because with less than 20 minutes left, it's unlikely John will be able to beat Matt by decking.
See, Jason's going to tick up. Glare of Heresy is going to take care of Elspeth. Elspeth will tick up, so now tokens are going to come into play. He's going to pass the turn back. Kassari with only 1 card in his hand. Draw another one. He's going to concede the game. So Matthew Nass, our undefeated player after day 1, still undefeated, moves on to 10-0, defeating John Kassari. He's going to pick up his 2nd loss now. This is his first loss with the Fog deck, and he has 1 loss in Legacy with 12 Post.